Alright, welcome to the ultimate comparison between the cameras of the S23 Ultra, the latest and greatest from Samsung right now, and the Google Pixel 7 Pro, which is almost 6 months old but still going strong. And this is going to be a detailed comparison. Now this video took a lot of times. I took over 700 samples, both of these phones combined, compared them for a long time and redid the whole thing because the March security patch actually improved a lot of aspects about the S23 Ultra, as I mentioned before. If you appreciate that effort, please consider liking, subscribing and turning on notifications for this particular channel. And without any further delay, let's check these out. Now, with all that put aside, let's dive into the camera samples. This is an ultra wide image. The Pixel 7 Pro has a better dynamic range because the greens on the S23 Ultra is not that great, honestly, especially far off. But overall, the exposure, especially in the shadow region, is better represented, better color representation as well on the Pixel 7 Pro. Moving on to the wide lens, the same characteristics continue, and the detail retention and sharpness is pretty good on both of them, but there is a good color shift in the S23 Ultra sample and it has turned way warmer than the ultra wide sample on the S23 Ultra. Zooming into 2x for both of these, the Pixel 7 Pro again has way better dynamic range over here. The S23 Ultra again is warmer than expected than the actual scene. Also blows out some highlights in the skies without retaining as much details in the shadows compared to the Pixel. Going into 3x, the detail retention on the S23 Ultra is probably superior over here, but again the exposure is overall well balanced on the Pixel, especially in the shadows, while controlling the highlights as well. Zooming into 5x now, you can see the Pixel 7 Pro has taken a lead again in terms of sharpness and details, but the exposure on the S23 Ultra is not as great and it has underexposed by a large margin, especially in the shadows. Now in the 10x shot, the Pixel 7 Pro loses out a bit of detail because it's zooming in digitally from its 5x telephoto, but overall the exposure again looks better. Although the S23 Ultra has better details, the exposure, especially in the shadows, does not look as good as the Pixel. Now this shot is taken around dusk, so there is no direct sunlight on the subject over here, and the same kind of pattern you can see. The shadow detail in the S23 Ultra is slightly lacking. Also the greens are very weirdly represented compared to the Pixel especially. Coming to the wide angle lens of both of these at 1x, the color shift is again noticed in the S23 Ultra sample, including the weird green representation and haloing around the leaves if you zoom in and check over here. Again, zooming into 2x, the detail retention on the Pixel 7 Pro looks good with a better exposure, contrast and not having weird green colors like the S23 Ultra. And at 3x, definitely the S23 Ultra looks better, although the slight contrasty look looks way more. Although the Pixel 7 Pro is actually closer to the shot that I saw with my own eyes at 3x because of the contrast and the representation, especially during dusk time, as I mentioned. The S23 Ultra, although looking overexposed, I think most people might side with this, especially because of the details. And over here the greens look way more natural, which is better. At 5x, definitely there is more details in the Pixel 7 Pro as expected. Moving into 10x, the Pixel 7 Pro kind of loses out in the details a bit, but maintains a better exposure and the color of the building compared to the S23 Ultra. This kind of trend is actually noticeable, especially if you can see this is again during dusk time with no direct sunlight. The greens are very weirdly represented in the grass, the tree nearby. If you see the far off tree over here, definitely has very weird artifacting and haloing around. Same thing you can see over here. The Pixel 7 Pro, although does not look as attractive as the S23 Ultra, definitely most people, if seen in isolation, might pick the S23 Ultra. But given that it was getting way darker at this point, the greens and the processing in the far off objects, especially the leaves, very weird in the S23 Ultra. The Pixel 7 Pro retains way more detail in the leaves and the shadows as well without botching up the greens. Moving into night mode, here this is a clear win for the S23 Ultra, right from the white balance to the exposure and the maintaining of highlights and shadows. I think the S23 Ultra has done a better job compared to the Pixel 7 Pro, which is kind of warmer than expected. Not just that, also blowing out certain parts of the highlights from the ultra wide angle lens. But here again, the S23 Ultra has a drastic shift in white balance and turns way more warmer than expected. The Pixel 7 Pro actually gets very close to the actual white balance I saw with my own eyes, not to mention having better control over the highlights and the shadows in this particular picture, and not to mention the S23 Ultra makes the sky way more bluer than expected. The S23 Ultra definitely has a more attractive picture and probably more social media friendly as per most people. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. In this picture, I intentionally had more part of the sky to see how they exposed the night sky. It was pitch dark in the sky right now, and you can see a section of the S23 Ultra sky picture where it's exposed weirdly and it's not black. The Pixel 7 Pro has close to a pitch black sky while maintaining the highlight and shadow details of the building very well. Over here again, the S23 Ultra actually has a better exposed shots, but if you see to the building at the right, the walls of the building have lost its textures a lot, and also the shadow details is almost close to not present. But the Pixel 7 Pro does not look as attractive as the S23 Ultra shot, but retains a lot more details, controls the highlights better, and you can kind of see a pattern over here where the Pixel actually does a better job in controlling highlights without over processing and showing halo effects, which you can see in the S23 Ultra samples. Not just that, they might not look as attractive but retain a lot more details over here in the main lens especially, and makes sure in the night the sky looks like the night sky and not like dusk or evening. Here are some glaring issues with the S23 Ultra according to me. As you can see in this picture, the S23 Ultra is definitely overexposing, which it tends to in a lot of cases as you saw in the previous samples. The greens are very weird. Pixel 7 Pro picture over here looks very pleasing and close to the actual scene that I saw, but the S23 Ultra is definitely way far from reality, although people might prefer it. Coming over to the wide angle lens, again you can see the S23 Ultra has done some weird over sharpening, some weird saturation in the greens, and definitely an overexposure compared to the Pixel 7 Pro. Now here is the ultimate weakness of the S23 Ultra in low light. I let the shutter open for the max amount of time in its night mode, which was around 7 seconds in this particular shot, whereas the Pixel 7 Pro had a max shutter speed of 2 seconds in its max setting in night side. You can see the uneven HDR processing in the shadows in the wall over here on the S23 Ultra. It looks absolutely horrible when you zoom in. This trend actually continues in all of the pictures. With the wide angle lens, you can still see that problem happening at the corners of the walls where there are sharp shadows especially. The S23 Ultra just messes it up. Here the white balance is way more accurate on the S23 Ultra, but the details are absolutely absent, especially in the shadows, which is very disappointing to see with a 5-second or 7-second shutter speed. Given that it has more number of frames to process and render, you would feel that the HDR processing would even out all these light exposures, but no. Again here at 3x, the clear winner is the Pixel 7 Pro with a very good exposure, good details in the shadows where it's almost absent, and again weird haloing around the plant, the light source and the lamp, and a lot of parts in the wall apart from obvious noise as well in the shadows. Moving on to the 5x lens, here as well the S23 Ultra actually gets the white balance right, but absolutely has no details in the shadows, and the last pillow is almost absent over here. The Pixel 7 Pro kind of underexposes the shot relatively, trying to control the light. It's not a perfect shot, and especially in terms of white balance it's wrong completely. The detail retention is way higher and accurate on the Pixel 7 Pro without any weird HDR processing. The same pattern continues here, and unfortunately where the Pixel 7 Pro is digitally cropping in at 10x and the S23 Ultra actually has a optical 10x lens, color noise over here on the pillow is horrendous on the S23 Ultra, especially with a 5-second shutter on a tripod. This is just unacceptable to me at this price point, and you can see the details and the color of the blue pillow cover in the yellow light looking so weird in the S23 Ultra. Moving on, again the color representation over here you can see on the quiche and the greens. I won't say the Pixel 7 Pro is accurate or anywhere close to reality, but if you see the S23 Ultra sample in comparison, it's absolutely from another Disney universe where the colors are way more popping than it is expected. Now this this is another problem on the Pixel 7 Pro. When you digitally zoom in at night side, it tends to overexpose and you can see the details absolutely disappearing in terms of regular parts of the picture as well as the highlights. But the S23 Ultra does better with a dedicated 10x lens. But where the image changes is actually when I tap to focus and expose on the Pixel 7 Pro and pull down the shadow slider. It takes a less amount of time to process the night side picture and surprisingly gets way more details in comparison to the S23 Ultra. Now you can definitely opt to not get such a dramatic image, but yeah, that is the strength of the Pixel 7 Pro right from the camera app without using any Pro mode and not having a restriction of zooming into 10x or 30x, especially on its night mode. Coming to selfies, I think here in terms of details, the S23 Ultra is a clear winner. If you see the color of my t-shirt, it is definitely getting it wrong, especially the greens in the background and the sky as well is very weirdly represented in terms of colors, not to mention my skin tones as well. The red tint effect is actually existing very much prominently on the S23 Ultra. If you see the portrait image shot, yes, the edge detection is definitely superior in case of the S23 Ultra, but the exposure on my hair and the greens again represented very weirdly, including my skin and t-shirt in this particular S23 Ultra shot. Continuing with low light selfies, here the S23 Ultra is a clear winner in terms of details, skin tones, and the shirt color is absolutely wrong. For human subjects, I think the 3x telephoto is a great focal length for capturing such pictures. I personally prefer the picture on the S23 Ultra over here because the pixel actually over sharpens and makes a very over contrasty look, because of which it looks a bit fake. The light and the green color of the top is completely wrong on the S23 Ultra, and you can see a very color cast over here due to the candle at the lower part of the frame, whereas the Pixel 7 Pro definitely does not get the white balance right. Although because night sight was triggered and there was slight movement, you can see a haloing effect of the arm movement on the left side of the frame in the Pixel 7 Pro sample. Coming to other samples in relatively low light, this is again during dusk where there is no direct sunlight, and the Pixel 7 Pro does some over processing while zooming in from the primary camera at around 3x or so, whereas the S23 Ultra does a way better job in terms of exposing, creating a relatively natural look. Moving on to few more shots of landscapes. Over here you can see the sky color and the buildings at the background in the S23 Ultra shot looks very weird. They are very weirdly cut out and overexposed overall, and you can again see the haloing effect over here as well. Coming on to the main camera sample over here, you can see that again the background building is overexposed widely. Not just that, again there is a shift in the color white balance on the S23 Ultra to a warmer tone, including the greens being represented a bit weirdly. Coming to a last sample in low light in artificial lighting, you can see the wood grain and the details on the Cafe Noir sign over here is way more detailed and accurately represented on the Pixel 7 Pro, whereas on the S23 Ultra it does look attractive, but it has a very weird color casting, and especially on the leaves you can see on the plant, the green is way off than the original color, but the background bokeh is very attractive on both of these phones. Alright, so you saw the camera samples now. What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious to know. Apart from that, let's get into the video samples now, where there are some more surprises waiting for you. 4K 30 FPS from the ultra wide of both these phones. Let me know about the dynamic range, quality, lens switching, and the audio as well. I'll keep switching quickly so that you can see how the transitions are, and also keep walking to give you an idea about the stabilization. Here's me switching while walking. Okay, drastic shift in exposure at 10x. Now both can record HDR videos. The S23 Ultra definitely has HDR 10 plus. I'm not sure about the Pixel 7 Pro. Here's with all the lenses, but again the S23 Ultra is way wider. Let me zoom in a bit. Now 2x and 3x on the Pixel and the S23 Ultra, 10x on the S23 Ultra, 5x on the Pixel. Stabilization definitely looks better on the Pixel, although both of my hands are not that stable. Both can record HDR videos and Pixel with voice enhancement as well from the front facing camera at 4K 30 FPS, no problems. Let me know about the HDR performance. Looks like the Pixel is better on screen, but definitely it might be different on the device. So the S23 Ultra can record 4K 30 fps cinematic video or portrait video, as you can see from its main lens and the 3x lens. The Pixel 7 Pro unfortunately capped at 1080p and also not that great in quality as far as I could see. But about the dynamic range, colors, stabilization and the audio, let me know in the comments down below. Another thing, Galaxy S23 Ultra can actually record with the 3x lens using the portrait video mode as well, so that's a big bonus as well. And this is what happens when you take non-living objects with the cinematic or portrait mode of both of these phones. It's not at all accurate on both of these, but again on the S23 Ultra you can use the 3x lens, which looks kind of nice actually. Not again accurate, but not horrible as well. But the Pixel definitely needs some work over here. This particular category is a definite win for the S23 Ultra. Coming to the conclusion, you have to obviously consider the price difference between these phones. It's really drastic, and you have to consider if the 10x telephoto performance, especially in usual daylighting condition, worth it over the Pixel 7 Pro 5x telephoto lens. That's mostly the difference. Apart from the Samsung processing, I actually preferred the ultra wide samples from the S23 Ultra in terms of details and sharpening, especially compared to the Pixel 7 Pro, because it kind of falls apart in a lot of scenarios. Difference is not as drastic as the price difference again. Apart from that, if you're someone who has a mirrorless camera and you know your manual camera settings, and you probably have this in your pocket instead of a mirrorless camera, and you want the best possible output in video or photo, the Pro modes for both video and photo can help you out a lot to get your desired output. Now, the Pixel 7 Pro also gives you ample room to play around with exposure, white balance and shadows, etc., but definitely cannot match the intricacy of what the Samsung can achieve with the minute levels of customization in your camera experience. Apart from that, if you ask me, the general processing, the detail retention, the skin tone representation, the exposure balancing, the less number of caveats you have on the Pixel 7 Pro is what makes it more attractive to me. It's more practical, especially in terms of, setting accessibility in the camera app. Holding it is a lighter and smaller phone with more curved edges, which helps it to be more comfortable in the hand. Overall, just the look and feel of the photos is something that I prefer of the Pixel 7 Pro. The S23 Ultra has some major improvements to make, especially in the low light processing, as I pointed out. I don't know, I've heard that a huge camera update is coming up and I hope that it fixes it all, but as of shooting this video, it's not really fixed and not the biggest fan. And these things happening in such a high priced phone is something that makes it way less attractive to me and makes the Pixel 7 Pro a very good proposition, especially for folks who want a great camera on their smartphone. That's about it about the camera comparison between the Pixel 7 Pro and the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Let me know how you found this video. Drop a like, comment on this video and subscribe if you like my content. With that said, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.